Hi and welcome to this behind the scenes review of what happened when I was reviewing Inferno, the latest novel by Dan Brown. My name is Matthew Dentith. I'm a philosopher who specialises in conspiracy theories, and this is behind the scenes of the Inferno review. First thing I should note is that you are not actually looking at an image of my bedroom here. This is actually a very elaborate set that was paid for by a grant that probably wasn't from Creative New Zealand, whose name is not to be associated with the review of this book in any way, shape or form. What happened is I got some money to do a review of the book. And once you get one bit of grant funding, it's really easy to get a second bit of grant funding. So I got about 150 to pay for the review of the book, the writing of the review, the renting of this rather wonderful smoking jacket, and of course publication on the review on my own blog. And because I got that bit of research funding, grant funding, I was then able to then get grant funding from other avenues, which actually included a set building grant of about $5,000. So what we did is we actually constructed a replica of my bedroom using entirely bespoke pieces, and we set that up down in the Britomart train station. Now actually it turned out that original set actually only set us back about 2k, so we actually built a second set, which you'll see later on in this review. And so, whilst it appears I'm sitting in my bedroom reading Dan Brown's Inferno on my iPad using the Kindle app, actually it turns out what's really happening here is that I'm actually in downtown Auckland reading it on a really cold Tuesday night. I mean, it was bitterly cold, it was raining, that's why there's no sound. You just would be hearing the pitter-patter of rain over the top of the tarpaulin, which is sitting over the top of this. And so yeah, that's what I did. Sat there for 4 hours that night, basically working on a review of a book which is pretty terrible and not really worth your while. At one particular point in time, you'll note that I was drinking whiskey there, or what appears to be whiskey. Of course, it would be unprofessional to actually literally be drinking whiskey whilst doing a book review that's been paid for by a grant that isn't given to you by Creative New Zealand. So what happened was that we had to experiment with finding, this is the second set, this is a replica of the lounge in my house. This is also downtown Britomart, but this is actually the next morning. I did have to sleep. Not because the book sent me to sleep, but actually because I'm a human being. Human beings need sleep. If you don't need sleep, see a doctor. Anyway, back to the whiskey story. We can't really drink whiskey whilst doing these reviews, so what we did was had to experiment with finding a way of making a whiskey-like drink appear during the midst of the review. Not that actually we ever thought we were going to be showing this footage, but of course we're professionals, and professionals always do this particular kind of thing. They think ahead. Now I absolutely loathe cold tea. It is a hot tea especially, revolting liquid to ever put down someone's throat or pass over the taste buds in a person's tongue. So actually what we ended up doing was we ended up actually taking cold double brown, which had basically lost its fizz, putting that into a bottle and replicating the whiskey experience. Because it turns out that double brown does not qualify as beer, thus doesn't qualify as being alcoholic, and thus was perfectly appropriate for me to be drinking double brown whilst reviewing a Dan Brown novel. Make of that what you will. So yes, this is the second set. That's a headless image of Anubis. We thought that'd actually be a nice thing to add in there. As you can see, it's the next day, got a bit of sunlight coming through, and I'm basically approaching the end of the novel at this particular point in time, and suffering small hemorrhagic fevers actually brought on by the experience of reading and trying to understand exactly what's going on with the conspiracy thriller known as Inferno. It's a interesting book insofar that books can be interesting if they're really deathly dull and nothing really happens and you force yourself to read it page by page, blood actually seeping out of sores on your back and actually causing you to really question what you're doing in life and what the purpose of your existence is, if it comes down to being excited by about spending 8 hours reading a new novel by Dan Brown. So yeah, that was basically it. I spent 8 hours in these two very elaborate sets, paid for by grants that didn't come from Creative New Zealand, although maybe they did. Once again, Creative New Zealand has sworn secrecy on this particular matter, and doesn't want to talk to me about what went on here. And frankly, I don't blame them. I was reviewing Dan Brown's Inferno.